I wanted to continue this conversation that we were having surrounding boundaries and nursing. Now, when I was 16 years old, my grandmother enrolled me in a self-defense course. And I remember as one of the activities, we paired up and then we would walk towards each other in this class. And when we felt that that person was giving off a vibe that we should not enter their personal space, that we would stop. And with my partner, I do remember she was quite a bit older than me, but I wasn't able to get very far into her boundary. And then when she walked toward me, she could get right up in my face. And I remember the teacher working with me on this, and it was kind of, I guess, a clue for later in my life and looking back at that and realizing I didn't have very good boundaries at the time. Very good personal boundaries of my physical space. So we're going to talk about boundaries in nursing and how to get better at setting boundaries and what types of boundaries am I talking about. We're going to talk about some different kinds of boundaries. Then we're going to discuss how you can improve upon your boundaries. If you're new here, I'm Dr. Lisa Chappell. I'm a Doctor of Nursing Practice, an associate professor, and studying to have my board certification as a health and wellness nurse coach. I make videos for nurses, students, nurse professionals, and caregivers on how to become more empowered and resilient. Let's get started. Typically, I think a lot of nurses in particular, just because of the nature of what draws people into this profession, you're drawn into the profession because you want to serve others, you want to care for people. I think nursing is getting more inclusive in terms of the types of people that are attracted to the profession, that we have more of a variety now. But historically, it's been because you felt a calling from deep within and that you wanted to serve others. So along with this calling, I think sometimes is some fluidity around personal boundaries and knowing when enough is enough and knowing where to set those. Okay, so let me talk about 4 different kinds of boundaries within nursing and some of the different challenges I see in our profession, as well as some problem solving and how we can get better at setting these boundaries. First of all, the 4 types of boundaries that I'm referring to are physical boundaries, emotional boundaries, mental boundaries, and environmental boundaries. Okay, so let's talk about physical boundaries. These are boundaries around our personal space, and boundaries are in place, first of all, to protect. We are protecting ourselves by having boundaries, and it is normal to have boundaries. Let me clarify this. Cells, for example, cells have boundaries. They have a cell membrane. They could be permeable or semi-permeable or selectively permeable. It's a boundary protecting the interior of the cell and then preventing certain molecules from entering the cell. But it's selectively permeable, meaning some things do get in, but there are boundaries around what can and can't come in. And so biologically, we are designed to have boundaries, and physical boundaries around our personal space is one of these. These may vary from culture to culture in terms of how close someone can physically be in your personal space. In nursing, by nature of what we do at the bedside, caring for people in very intimate ways, then we have to maintain a professionalism about that. And professionally, we also have boundaries, and these boundaries are designed to protect. So protecting our license, protecting our personal space, protecting our personhood and what is okay and what is not okay, and then extending those boundaries and protecting our patients. All of these skills are really important in having a satisfying career in nursing. And so violations of physical boundaries might include, and I can remember when I was a brand new nurse on the units, I remember there was an infectious disease physician who was very flirtatious with the nursing staff. And I remember feeling very uncomfortable around this physician, but then needing to interact with him in order to get what I needed for my patients. And I do remember he'd be looking at my ring and say, "Oh, I didn't notice that you're married. Last time I talked to you, I'm pretty sure you weren't wearing that ring," which had nothing to do with what needed to be done for the job. Learning to confront the situations and stand up for yourself is really important. And so in that situation, directly confronting this physician saying, "Excuse me, please don't touch my hand. That makes me feel uncomfortable." Or you may have to get more aggressive. "You're violating my personal space. I need you to back up." And or involving human resources, which is an excellent resource for you in an employment setting. Sometimes you may need to do that. Another violation of physical boundaries sometimes could come from patients. And this can get kind of blurry in terms of where to set that line in terms of physical boundaries, because patients are vulnerable. They might not be in an optimal mental state. They may have delirium or dementia that alter their cognition. And so these are factors that can play into it where there may not be an intentional violation of boundaries. But it's still important to advocate for yourself as a nurse. And a lot of times nursing tends to not advocate for themselves right away. Then a situation escalates where it hasn't been documented that many nursing staff have been abused or violated in a particular situation. And then it's not until it becomes really bad that management gets called into the situation, or it's reported, or that it needs to be a team approach and coming up with a plan of care to address this issue so that nursing staff feel supported. So advocating for yourself, it's okay if you need to keep a person safe, make sure that they have an ability to call, but then to walk away, and that is okay, and then maybe try again later, or to enlist some help to help you out so that you don't have a violation of your boundaries in terms of physical violence against you or advances that are uncomfortable for you. So let's talk about emotional boundaries and what you let into your emotional space and what you don't. When you're at work, in the work environment, it's fun to have fun with colleagues, that's for sure. And you'll get to know each other, and you might tell stories about your personal life at home. But when that becomes invasive and it becomes something like it's gossip or it's oversharing, that you don't engage in that kind of talk, whether it's what you're saying, that you're kind of monitoring yourself in terms of what you're sharing and how it could affect you overall in the future, as well as engaging in talk about others, or that maybe it's something inappropriate or just that doesn't help you achieve what you need to during your day. So how do you recognize that your emotional boundaries are being crossed? Well, we're all designed with internal flags, radar, red flags that go up, warning bells that sound, feelings like a sick feeling in your stomach, or just not feeling right about something, where you may need to do some self-assessment and ask yourself, what is it that's uncomfortable in this situation for me? And then coming up with a plan for taking action. Now, I do have a couple of videos, including one on nurse bullying, which I will link below, and some tools that can help you advocate for yourself, as well as a tool just for developing self-awareness. And so I'll link both of those videos below. Same thing goes for mental boundaries. Some of this just might include being able to plan your day so that you can get out of work on time. And so are you able to manage your time? Are you able to set some boundaries around perhaps helping your CNAs, which is great to do. You should always help your CNAs, you should help your team, really. But are you managing to put some time then around what you need to accomplish? When I first started as a nurse, and I had been a CNA for quite some time, I came in saying to myself, I am going to help my CNAs. And that was really important to me. And so when I started off, that's what I was doing. I was going around, we were turning all our patients together, bathing the patients, tag teaming everything. And then after a couple weeks, I realized I wasn't getting any of my work done. I needed to pass meds. I needed to spend an incredible amount on documentation, which transitioning from CNA to a registered nurse position, that's a huge challenge, just realizing how much documentation there is to complete. And so you're gonna have to set boundaries around your time during the day so that you can get done what you need to get done, so you can get out on time. And setting boundaries throughout that day is going to be important, and figuring out where they should be for you, what's okay in terms of crossing those boundaries, and then what will not be okay, and where you need to set some hard lines. All right, and then finally, environmental boundaries. So environmentally, in, for example, the hospital setting, things that maybe we took for granted prior to COVID have now become front and center. That there's inherent risk in caring for people. And this means that we need to be able to protect ourselves, that we need the proper personal protective equipment, proper PPE, to be able to protect ourselves. And that's a boundary, really. It is a boundary. And so early on in the pandemic, when we didn't have enough supplies, that was a major red flag in terms of what can we do to make sure that nurses have the proper equipment in order to do their jobs and to protect themselves at the same time. Environmental, I also think, can be a part of your internal environment and the thoughts that are coming through. And we all have negative thoughts. That's a part of life. But do you attach to those thoughts? Do you grow those thoughts? Or do you try to grow the positivity instead? This can set you up for either having a toxic internal environment or having a positive, more optimistic internal environment. And the goal, of course, is to become more positive, because it's going to help you have a more satisfying life. Again, check out those other videos that I have with some tools on how to help you with your internal mindset. In improving boundaries, one of the keys is self-awareness. And so paying more attention to those feelings that you have when something isn't right, when something is off, and when you're feeling violated in some way, that you feel like a boundary has been crossed, that you really start to pay attention. And what is your first response? Do you tend to pay attention to your boundaries and set them and then confront an issue? Or do you tend to just allow your boundaries to be crossed? If you're one of those that continuously lets your boundaries be crossed, then you're going to have to start developing some tools and techniques to help yourself. Now, I do have a free download for a guide to creating SMART goals. And I think that setting some goals around creating better boundaries for yourself is a great idea. And that could look like, within the next week, I am going to say no to at least one person who crosses a boundary. And you might start off like that, and then if you're at the end of the week, when you evaluate that, if you're not able to achieve that goal, ask yourself why, and start drilling down to what is the core reason why you might not have some really solid boundaries for yourself around your time, your energy, your emotional status, your physical personhood, or internally in terms of the thoughts that are invading your space. I hope this video was helpful to you. Please give it a like. Also, do click that subscribe button below. Hit that bell for notifications as I do release new videos every week. I hope you have an amazing day, week, month, and year, and I'll see you in the next video.